Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm with my new friend, Dave Rennyson, and my old friend, Nathan Anderson, who are working with SuccessKPI. This is a group where I know Nathan just joined recently, and as I was talking with him about this platform and all the different things that they're doing over there, I really wanted to share this on a roundtable because I thought this was a really cool platform. So to kind of kick it off here today, Dave, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into the seat you're in today?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thanks. And thanks for having us here, Adam. I really appreciate it. So Success KPI is a bit of a culmination of life's work for me. I started off in a contact center. In fact, one of my first contact centers was in collections in the telecom industry. But I've been working on software pretty much for the last 30 years since then in all sorts of different environments, moving from enterprise to cloud to now what I consider this latest generation of pure cloud software, pure SaaS software. And the platform that we've built is a 360-degree analytics tool to allow those who run large customer-facing operations to improve business, improve and transform their digital operations, and as well as to drive business outcomes for better bedside manner, better customer experience, better collections, or whatever business result you're chasing.
Awesome. Nathan, I know a lot of people watching this have probably met you at one time or another, but why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about how you got to the seat you're in today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar in a lot of ways. I've been in the call center space since college. Started as a bill collector, collecting on bad checks back in 1995. So that dates me a little bit, but I mean, the evolution I've had over the last probably 5 years has been really interesting. Where I had the honor and opportunity of working with a company called Interactions. Got a really fun kind of seat exposure to the digital transformation of a lot of these organizations. Saw some really needs in a lot of those organizations, and just kind of evolutionary wise made sense to make this transition. I got a chance to work with Dave before as well, and really just cool what he's building and what we're building for the industry specifically. So yeah, excited to share, and thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Always a pleasure to continue working with you. So as you and I started talking about, SuccessKPI and kind of the three of us jumped on a call to get a better understanding of the platform itself. I think it's really interesting because it sounds like what you guys are doing is adding a tool, taking one step forward to take three steps back, meaning that you're you're adding one thing to the application stack here, but in order to kind of make it considerably easier to manage the other 6, 7, 8 different platforms that a call center is ultimately using. So nobody can tell the story better than you guys. So I won't try and tell it, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what SuccessKPI is and kind of what you guys are doing in the industry?
Yeah, so I think if you break it down, in your contact center, whether you're in customer service, customer success, or billing and collections, you generally have some type of grouping of customer contact applications. And some people might have one unified, like Genesys Cloud environment, or they might use a system like LiveVox, and then maybe Twilio for chat and speech and text. And so that the problem kind of starts there, that the contacts are typically cutting across multiple applications. Okay. Then you enter one or two or even three different systems of record, especially if you're dealing in first or third party payments. You might have data coming from 3, 4, 5 different sources that you're trying to unify. And now you're off to the races. And unfortunately, then we, with best intentions, come along and try to put tools on top of that to see how things are going. We kind of saw this problem coming at SuccessKPI and thought about what the ultimate tool set would be like. And the first thing is that it would be adaptable. So we built a data lake and a data warehouse that allow you to consume structured and unstructured data. Structured data can be like, who did I call? How long did the call last? What agent took it? Was it their first or fifth or 10th call of the day? But the unstructured data can be things like, what was the sentiment of that contact? How did the customer feel? What did they say? What was the content? Was it a collectible call in the first place? Did it meet the standards for what our best trainers would think? And we do this using artificial intelligence and machine learning to transcribe these conversations, perform natural language understanding, sentiment analytics, and all of that. We then add on top of that a machine scoring and a supervisor scoring capability, because sometimes you need things done by machines and some things are better off done by humans using scorecards. And this can allow us to do things like fraud detection or compliance, or just making sure that procedures are being followed, or finding out what the calls are really about. And then we add on top of that a business intelligence layer that allows you to analyze all this data, and a real-time action framework that lets you do things using what we call an if this then that engine. We talked about that a bit. We can get into that later. I think the biggest thing we do that's superpower here is we add all these products with one platform. And we find that when we're talking to customers, they're sometimes a little nervous about adding one more tool to the mix, but we typically are taking 6, 7, or 8 different tools out, and we're unifying a view that was impossible to pull together previously.
Well, I think that's important, right? When you have all of these siloed data points, and you're coming to bring them together for an analysis or to add value, that there's challenges to that. And so, it's one thing to lay a KPI unit over it, or to look at it from a data analytics standpoint. And, I know a lot of people are familiar with Power BI from Microsoft and those kinds of things. But, really what it sounded like to me is, when we were talking about it, was one, that you guys were actually born in the cloud, meaning that you're interacting with cloud platforms, and your organization was literally built in it from the ground up, which I think is incredibly important. I know a lot of people have heard me through the years say, stop taking desktop applications, putting them on a cloud server and calling it the cloud, because that's not what it is. And I think that's been a misnomer for many years. But I also think it's really interesting the way that you guys are using the if this then that. And that, I think, is a major differentiator, because it's one thing to look at the KPIs. It's another thing to be able to automate or create actions directly from it. Analytics and KPIs have been used by executives for years, but how does that translate into the operational side of the world? So could you tell everybody a little bit more about kind of that differentiator?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I think about if this then that, it's usually a complex series of things, and I'll just kind of make one up on the spot here. But if the sentiment of the call is negative, but it's highly collectible, and maybe it's one of your top targets in terms of value as much as your perception based on credit score, and this call is going south, how would you want to intercede? Would you want to text a supervisor or bridge them onto the conversation? Or maybe you take a reverse and all that's going well. Would you want to put that away to study that call later and send it to an evaluation room? So the actions we can take are, we can do alerts, like I mentioned, text and email, or we can invoke transfers, or we can provide agent assistant coaching, or we can accumulate data by creating a record in your system of record about it, or setting up a coaching opportunity later. So all of these actions are based on blending kind of playbooks that you create. That's actually what we call them, based on outcomes that you want to have happen in the business. And by the way, an important part is all the data that gets generated by those playbooks also gets put back in the data lake.
Interesting. And so I'm assuming that with the organizations that you're working with currently, that you're actually integrated back into the system of record. So the data and action plans are still being driven through ultimately the standardized communication and data management channels that are being used by the customer today.
That's exactly right. We're more of a broker in those actions than the actual executor of them, because we work in harmony with the text messaging platforms and the contact center as a service platform. So whether you're using, like I mentioned earlier, Amazon or Twilio or LiveVox or Genesis, we're going to sit into that environment and just work.
Very interesting and very exciting at the same time. Now, one of the other things that you mentioned was kind of the structured versus unstructured data. And that's always a challenge for this industry, because yes, there's some good structured data, meta tags on the calls and those kinds of things. But there's also a lot of unstructured collector notes and other things that constantly present challenges. And those can be challenges that are even difficult in the simplest of formats, like doing a system conversion or a system upgrade. So tell me a little bit about kind of the structured versus non-structured data and the time frame in which you can actually deploy this tool set.
Yeah, so interesting question, but the way you connect this data is, of course, still has to be determined. But in most cases, let's take the most unstructured data we have, which is a call recording. We can transcribe it. We can see what was said. We can use natural language and understand, the actual conversation and what was meant
Mhm.
and the sentiment around that. We are going to take all of that and use the call recording ID to tie that to the rest of the conversations. But
Mhm.
then because of the way that our structured framework works on the back end with our data warehouse, we'll also tie that data to other data elements like the last call to that conversation or the last time that person emailed or contacted you. And we'll bring all of that into one unified view. And so I think the two powers that we see here are that the unstructured data can be harmonized with the structured data. And the second that is that it used to be we would create silos for things like this. So I got to stand up an instance of a third party speech and text analytics platform, and
Mhm.
then all that data sits on an island. Well, we're going to give you the same capabilities, but not be on an island. As for activation, we don't support every platform today, so there's always some new integrations necessary for a contact center, and those typically take us a few weeks. But notwithstanding new plumbing to new systems, generally our system is up and running in a matter of days
Wow.
and working for you in hours.
Wow. That is a phenomenal turnaround time. And I think everybody understands that, not every system is supported, but at least from the list that we were talking about prior to the call, it sounds like a good chunk of the industry is currently supported based on the platforms, that you guys have kind of listed for me. And I will, I would encourage anybody that's interested in this to take a look at the Success KPI website, and we'll be happy to include a link below. As we kind of talk about, I mean, there's a lot to unwrap when it comes to data analytics, if then that. There's a lot to that, and especially as we think about the application of artificial intelligence and everything else. But is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience today about kind of what your platform is and how it is a differentiator for their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a lot of really key points. It's always great talking to an industry expert. I think being born in the cloud's a big thing. So that just we're a pure serverless architecture. So you're not waiting for things to happen. You're not worrying about scale.
Mm.
And because we've done this in kind of a unified, multi-tenant architecture, you have the ability to deploy this knowing that we've certified it, we've secured it, we've automated it, and we've made it work at scale up to tens
Mm.
of thousands of seats. And so
Wow.
you're coming along behind the work that's been done before. And even when we need to build a new set of plumbing for a new contact center platform or for a new system of record, once that work's done, we're going to productize that so
Mm.
that it can be reused for others, but also so that it just works. And that's an important thing for a lot of our clients of not having custom development and one-off things that create maintenance headaches and are harder to certify and make sure that they comply with the relative standards that we need to work with.
Yeah,
Does make it
one
a lot
thing,
more complex.
yeah, one other thing that I'll add is that, and Dave talked a little bit about this on the kind of the idea behind themes,
Mhm.
and how we really build a layer of intelligence, right, that just doesn't exist. And I'll use the example of the fact that really every entity that I've spoken with over the last 3 years, their digital presence or digital platform or digital first mentality is one of their, one or two top key initiatives, right? And that entails multiple channels of communication. And the ability to actually understand and create themes across channels is amazing, right? And I love the way Rennie says it is a superpower, but it is, right?
Mhm.
It's being able to, for instance, send a text, right? Get a call back, and then a follow-up email, and then be able to decipher how that theme went, where that
Mhm.
conversation's going, and contextually actually draw a business action out of that, right? So,
Mhm.
a lot of companies right now are very silent again on how they're using channels and don't
Mhm.
quite understand, did this email really drive this collection? Or
Mhm.
did this call really, drive a call back? Or was it something else? And being able to actually decipher that on this platform is, again, it's amazing. And I know, talking with a lot of executives out there, something that is very, very needed.
Well, there's no question about it. I mean, in all the consulting work that I do, a lot of it comes down to getting systems to talk to each other or collecting information from multiple places and putting it into an actionable format. But it's not action the way that you guys are talking about it, which is a much more direct to account level action. I think even the best organizations out there are using that information to try and drive strategy and not necessarily tactics. And it sounds like you guys have taken a strategic approach and made it more tactical, which means it's more direct to the operations and probably has a deeper effect on the bottom line. I have a feeling we're going to have to do a follow-up call here at some point once we've got kind of a mutual client who's on that platform, so that we can talk a little bit about kind of their storyline and how that worked out for them. That's something I'd be interested in doing in the future with you guys as well. But I feel like I've learned a lot. I know I learn a lot every time that I talk to Nathan, and it's been great to meet you, Dave, as well. So for those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave comments below. All three of us will be responding to those as they come through. I will also encourage you to check out the SuccessKPI website, and we'll include a link in our social post below as well. If you have any additional guests that you'd like to see me interview or topics that you'd like to see us cover, please feel free to leave a comment, shoot me a message. Always happy to create content based on what the industry wants to hear about. But for right now, gentlemen, I greatly appreciate your time today. Nathan, I know you're going to be out at both ACA International at Caesar's Palace, and you'll also be up at the RMAI Executive Summit in Stowe, Vermont this month. You got a busy month, my friend.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing you out there. And for anybody that sees Nathan walking around, stop, have a quick discussion with him. I think you'll be shocked at how cool this little platform is here. But for right now, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and energy today. And I look forward to seeing you again in the near future.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Great. Thanks, guys.